I'd like to congratulate you on the book because it's a really very good read. Peter said a couple of very nice things about them. But what I'd like to know, and I can imagine a couple of other people as well, is how did this start? When did you start thinking? Because you're not a writer. You haven't been a writer. This is your debut, your first book. You studied in Shanghai, then you studied in Amsterdam. You work at the University of Rotterdam. You have a very solid sort of scientific background. How did this book come about?
Actually, I'm always been interested in writing, right? But this is my first novel. I started to write when I was very young, maybe first published articles in newspapers in Chinese since age 13 or 14. So always been interested in writing. But I think for everyone who's interested in writing, always have the ambition one day to write his or her own book, maybe a fiction or something big, you know. And so I have been trying to write like short stories, also novels, but I tried many beginnings, nothing lead to anything. So this is the first serious one. So it was in 2008 when I was in Shanghai for 3 months with my husband and a child. And so living there for the whole summer. Actually, it's the season where the novel begins. I will remember it's the end of August, beginning of September. And our friends, writers' friends from New York, and they came to Shanghai. And then we get together. Then they were traveling in Shanghai and went to the cricket market, the bug market. So they were shocked. Just asked me, you know, what are those little insects? What Chinese people do with them? And I told them stories about those little insects and my childhood memories of my neighbors playing, gambling on those insects. So it started from there. They said, oh, that's a fascinating story. Why don't you write down? Write it into a novel. Something, you know, East and West, you know, past and now, you know, just mix them up and no-brainer, it will sell. Okay. Okay, so I think it's no-brainer, I will write. So I wrote a synopsis, sent to the friend in New York, and then she looked at it, oh, like a Balzac. Write it. Okay, I started to write and I started to write it. But then the story I got carried away and it become more and more different from Balzac. And but I didn't have much experience. So in Chinese saying, if you don't have much experience like a child, you dare to do anything, you don't have any inhibitions. So I just wrote. And I wrote very fast. I used my free time to write. Only half a year, I wrote the first draft. And I sent to some friends. And they gave me a lot of criticism. So I just rewrote. I spent another half year to rewrite the story and become what it looks now. But of course, it's being edited again. Yeah.
Did you have to throw away lots of what you wrote? Did you have to kill a lot of your darlings?
I think from the first draft till now, the first draft, I think I only used half of the first draft. And I combined some characters, throw away some characters, yeah.
And this editing, did you do it yourself? Because it's much easier if other people look at what you write and say, well, it's much clearer if you just throw away a bit or add a little bit here. Were you very harsh on yourself or were other people there for you?
Other people, yeah, they gave me some idea. They just told me where it doesn't work, what doesn't work. Then I just think about how to make the story work, make the characters work. So basically I did most of the editing, but other people helped me, of course, later, professional editing.
Now, you already mentioned something about cricket as a central theme in the novel. There seem to be quite a few themes. One of them is the difference between China and the Netherlands, or East and West. What does that mean for you? Because you were raised in China, then came to the Netherlands, go back to China quite often. What part of you is Chinese and what part of you is Dutch?
I think 100% Chinese, probably. But the one, and also told the story to the publisher, when I'm in China, I don't feel 100% Chinese. When I'm here, I feel I'm complete Chinese. But while you travel to your home country, you start to see the differences. And in your psychology, your habit, your reflex even, sometimes different, like in the traffic. Just everyday little things, because you're here for so long.
some of the things you describe are, you seem to sort of find out about Chinese culture much more by going back than, you became aware of a lot of Chinese cultural things much more going back than you originally were. So did you need your distance?
Yeah, definitely. I think a distance help you to see things and to reflect, definitely.
One of the other themes, Peter referred to it as well, is the difference between China or Shanghai now, which is a very, very fast-paced city, and China during the Cultural Revolution. Reading the bits about the Cultural Revolution, there's quite a bit of nostalgia, it seems to be, in your words, or in the words you put into the mouth of people. How come?
I myself, of course, don't have any nostalgia about the Cultural Revolution. I'm the next generation. I didn't live through that. But if you look at the Chinese people nowadays, if you talk to them, and you will see more and more people, you can hear them kind of having a longing or missing the older days, the communist regime. I think they're longing for the equality everyone's life is arranged for, or even those people in the Cultural Revolution, when they were young, their youth, if they were not suffered, the family were not trashed or suffered. And for many of them, it's kind of an adventure, because they were only 15, 16 years old. They're going through the country, they're empowered, they have all the power. So they look back, some kind of magic time for them.
Now, one of the other themes is a search for identity. Your protagonist is an orphan, looks for parents, who's the father, who's the mother. Is that partly your own story as well?
No, it's completely fictional.
I don't mean the person itself, but the search for identity, is that part of your story?
What's lying behind this is not, I use the story searching for parents, but actually it's searching for culture. Mm-hmm. So this is what I want to write about. I noticed people, when I talk to many Chinese young people, my generation even younger, lots of people say China has changed so fast. Now, we don't have much differences from the West. Very soon we'll all be the same. People wear the same clothes, eat the same thing, we think alike, In the younger generation, if you look at high school kids, university kids, we're all the same. The whole world, all the same. Chinese believe in that. They believe in that. Actually, after living in the West for so long, I just want to tell the people, no matter how long, how much you have changed, China is still China. Lots of things, the root is very deep. You cannot escape, eradicate. Yeah, just like the main character finally finding her parents. And even though it's very far away, but still there, and I'm not going to tell the story.
No, please don't. But it's your character going back and forth between Amsterdam and Shanghai, looking for identity. If you yourself go back to Shanghai, what strikes you most as something that really suits you, fits you?
In Shanghai?
In Shanghai, just going back to Shanghai.
What's really fits me, suits me? I cannot say fits me, suits me, but I need, not only like to go back to Shanghai from time to time, but I need to go back. But if I really live there, probably I'll be driven crazy soon too. But I need it. It's the stimulus. While here, life is quite, by Chinese standard, quite stable. And I say I have an anchor here. But while you go to Shanghai, things are happening. You meet lots of people, things are changing. Every evening you have activities different. And then you hear things. Lots of sounds, lots of noises, lots of colors, and then bombard you. And then give you the material. When you come back to the Netherlands, come at home, then you have time and the quiet, peace and quiet, you can sink in and start to reflect and write about it.
Then the last theme that I saw in the novel is the looking for truth. Is that an important thing for you?
This doesn't occur to me. Maybe it's your can you maybe tell me more how you see looking for truth?
Well, somebody, your protagonist is asking questions all the time, gets very vague answers, and somehow she continues asking, going to places and getting her answers, and it's a very long road. So I was wondering how important truth is for you and how difficult it is in China to get to the truth every now and then.
What I think I'm just describing this is a phenomenon, just also Peter Potman referred to people, the forgetness. The people deliberately they choose to forget. But the main character chooses another way. She deliberately wants to know what's buried, people don't want to remember. So actually many people remember, they just don't want to talk about it. Like my parents are the very good examples. They never want to talk about anything, and I never ask you to, don't ask, don't tell. So then we're happy. So I think this is, for many people, maybe younger generalists, quite ridiculous. Some people really do want to know, but where to know? If the people with knowledge, they withheld the knowledge. So that's a kind of a struggle, a tension between them in the story.
Your novel was first published in Chinese. Did you want to get it translated yourself, or how did this come about? Did a publishing house come to you? Did you approach?
First wrote in written Chinese, and then come to English because, of course, at the beginning I wasn't that ambitious. I think, oh, Chinese done is done. But once you have the Chinese version, I say, oh, I'm already here. Why not have an English one too? So just find a, but it's difficult to find a translator. So I think probably I know the story very well myself. I can translate. But then my husband, he's also a kind of a more like a scholastic writer. He's not a creative writer, but a scholarly. He's a very good writer, so we work together on the translation. Basically, I just tell him, I tried to translate my story myself, but he said, no, it doesn't work. No. So why don't we work together? So we spend a lot of time sit down, and I tell him the sentence by sentence, the meaning. Then he said what the English means idiomatically. Then put up a piece and then start to edit.
So this is into English, but now we get to the Dutch translation. I want to give you compliments for the very smooth and very elegant translation that you did, because it reads very well. So well done.
Thank you.
How did you start translating? Did you have a lot of contact? Like Tao describes lots of discussions on the novel with her husband, translating it into English. Did the two of you do that as well?
No, I don't think you would have had time for that. No,
We never met before.
No, yeah. Well,
You
yeah,
never met before?
before it was finished. No, yeah, we didn't know each other. That's the first thing. Yeah, you would have a full-time job, so you wouldn't sit down every day with me. No, I just started translating by myself, and I think the publisher put me in touch with Tao, and we emailed a lot. And
Sorry, would you like to stand in the center so we can all see you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
The publisher put me in touch with Yue Tao, and we emailed a lot, and I could pose my questions to her, and so of course she knew the book best. So it was like things that I think, well, what does that sentence actually mean? I'm not quite sure, but also things like, oh, she like in Chinese it's her mei mei, like little sister, but can I also say neighborhood, like buurmeisje, like neighborhood girl? Is that okay? Is that still your meaning? And so we could cooperate quite nicely, and that worked out very, very well, I think. So it was very good to have you here. Yeah.
And that communication was through email, through telephone?
Email, yeah.
Email. So you translated whole bits, and then you had a couple of questions for Tao?
Basically, yes.
And did you translate the whole book in a short period of time, or did it take quite a long time?
It took me quite a long time. It took me about half a year, I think. I'm not very fast.
The result pays. No, but because I translated myself a long time ago, but I translated movies, and translating movies gives you a lot of flexibility, because you can't translate literally. You just have to sort of interpret, and you have to do it short, so you're always looking for shorter words to say the same thing. And that suited me fine, because I liked sort of doing things by myself. Whereas here it seems, just looking at the Dutch, it's very fluent Dutch. It's nice flowing Dutch, but it's also quite Chinese. What was the most difficult part for you in translating Tao's words?
I think what you said about movie translation and, of course, literary translation, the difference is that you have even less freedom if you... Well, in a way, you're very, very limited. You have, okay, this many words, it has to say all of that. Okay, how to do that? And, of course, in the other hand, with writing a book, you can say anything you want in any space you want, so you have all the freedom.
Yeah.
And in literary translation is kind of in between. So you have to say exactly that, and you have a lot of space, but it has to be that.
There's a great responsibility for the translator to really get it right.
Yeah, exactly. So the most difficult part, I think, what I usually do is at first I go through it really fast, and then I started looking up difficult words and trying again, and actually the most difficult sentences were sometimes very mundane ones. There was one sentence that says something like, the lamplight shows some stripes on the floor, and something like that. I forgot the exact words, but in Chinese it made perfect sense, and in Dutch it looked ugly. It just didn't work, and I made like 10 to 20 different versions until I got something that looked kind of okay. And it was really,
And how about the crickets? Because it's quite something. These small crickets and the cricket fights. Not the kind of language that you usually learn or are acquainted with. How did you go about that?
Well, the advantage was, of course, that Lan, the main character, learns about cricket fighting herself. She doesn't know about it either, so the reader can learn it along with her. But I had to find words for like the little cages that the crickets are in, or little pots, or the ring that they fight in, things like that. So I had to come up with words that sounded plausible. I couldn't really, I didn't know anyone that I could ask, so I had to find it myself.
No cricket specialists in the Netherlands. You also translated some other books and articles. For instance, Gang, a famous Chinese blogger. If you compare translating other work and Yue Tao's work, what strikes you as a translator? What's special about Tao's writing?
Of course, Han is very. Han is a blogger. He writes about current affairs basically. So that's you have to. In a way, it's easier because you can look it up. What happened? Often Dutch newspapers have said something about it. So that's many words you can find that way, many terms. And for this book, it was. I don't know. It was actually a really good second translation. I think I could. It was not too difficult and not too easy either. I suppose that's the thing. I'm currently translating a book that's it's not hard to read, but very difficult to translate, and it's a different story.
So going back to you, during this translation time where you communicated with Annelous, did that make you look at your own text in a different way or not?
No, we are mostly talking about the technical details. This word, what does it mean exactly? That sentence, and or even person's names. How shall we translate names? If it makes sense or not. And Annelous is very meticulous, very serious translator. I really like her style, and she just go into every word, even every punctuation, even. I think.
You changed the punctuation well. Just going back to you and you about the book itself. What are your plans after this book?
I'm currently writing the sequel to this book. It's the same character come back to the Netherlands. So the backdrop in the Netherlands.
And because we discussed a couple of themes or thematic parts of the book, what for you is the most important theme to write about?
What the most important theme, I think, still goes back to, I think for maybe every writer, maybe the most fundamentals of what really bothers people. I think people don't want to talk about. Maybe death, sex, and some other, maybe I'm more interested in the dark part of the human nature.
Okay, so the sequel will have some of the dark part of that as well.
It's a darker book than this one.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tao, and thank you all.